So, how to calm a reptile, how to train a dragon, how to soothe the anger, the fear. This is the bit that is not necessarily straightforward. Most of us know how to care, how to love, how to have a conversation. But when emotions are really high, how do you help your kid to calm themselves down? Well, the first thing to say is that you can't help them at all unless you're calm. So the first aspect of calming a reptile is you have to be calm. And now, of course, if they've totally lost it, then you may have to dominate them. That sometimes is important. That will, of course, interact with them at a reptile brain level, but, if they're drowning, then you save them. But generally, if you can, you want to interact with them in a mammal-human way, in a cooperative and a thoughtful way, rather than a dominate or avoid way. So the first thing is you have to, as quickly as you can, look at yourself. Am I calm enough to be able to help? Do I care enough to be able to help? Sometimes when I've been triggered and I go reptile, the best thing I can do is just walk away. You just have to get out of there. So you've got to be calm. You may need to walk away and calm yourself down. And we all have ways of being calm. We'll go through them in what we could help with our children, and that can help with us as well. The second thing to say, it's very important to have a bolt hole. Somewhere you can go to, they can go to, where you take yourself there, you calm yourself there down, and then once you're calm, you come out, and then we try to solve it. So the bolt hole might be a bedroom, it might be a place in the house. It has to be a known place so that if your child goes to their bolt hole, you don't follow them into the bolt hole. If you've got an angry snake or a scared snake and the snake runs to their hole, if you put your hand in that hole, what's going to happen? You're going to get bit. If your child goes to their room to calm themselves down and you follow them in there, it will escalate the situation again. So the idea is that the people can go to their bolt hole. Once they're calm, then we talk about it. This, of course, assumes that they're safe in the bolt hole, and if that's not the case, you've got a different problem, and we won't cover that here. But let's assume that the bolt hole is a safe place. It's very important to have one. The third aspect of calming a reptile is resistance will escalate. If when your child comes at you like a crocodile, you reply as a crocodile, the most common thing they'll do is they will escalate. They'll ramp up their domination. They'll ramp up their control. They'll ramp up the intensity of the emotions. As an example, if you're here and they're here, if they pull you and try to bring you in a certain direction, if you pull back, they'll grip down. And then you pull back harder, and then they'll grab harder, then you grab harder. So by resisting their pull, they will escalate their pulling. So you can resist them if you wish, but it will likely escalate and lead you both into a combative interaction. The alternative to resistance is not to submit, because that is also reptilian. The advice I give people is that if your child pulls on you, go with them. Often as you go with them, they'll then let go. As you go with them, you say, hey, let's talk about this. I'm happy to consider what you want, but we need to have a conversation about it. This requires you to be calm enough to do this. It also requires you to be confident that you're good enough. Because you may have to say, hey, look, I'm not sure. I'm happy to talk about it. I'm happy to consider what you're saying. Let's talk about this. Let's think about it. It's very difficult to keep dominating someone who wants to cooperate with you. As an example, some people yell to try to dominate others. If the child yells at you, if you yell back, the yelling can go on for quite a while. If the child yells at you, but you just calmly respond to them, it's very difficult to keep yelling at someone who's not yelling back at you. If yelling is an issue between you and your child, just give it a go next time. Don't yell back. I think there's an old proverb, a gentle answer quietens anger. A harsh one stirs it up. If you resist, you are probably going to lead to escalation, a combative, avoidant interaction. So don't resist. The third aspect of how to calm a reptile is almost certainly it's going to be physical. It won't be a conversation. It probably won't be affection. Although sometimes, if they're on the border of moving into mammal from reptile to mammal, affection at that point may assist them to make that move. But generally it's going to be physical. It's going to be something to do with sound, something to do with sight, something to do with touch, something to do with taste, something to do with smell. These are very powerful physical ways of self-soothing. And, music is obviously incredibly soothing. Music soothes the savage beast. And our teenagers use music a lot. Music, rhythm, as an element of that. Martial arts, yoga, dance, just simply going for a walk. That rhythm, it doesn't come under sound, but movement is incredibly soothing. So going for a walk, squats, push-ups, going for a run, stress balls, the squeezing of a stress ball. There might be some vision. Now, haven't really found this that useful, but some people have found imagery, going to their safe place, useful, or looking at photos or things like that. Touching, this is not so much you touching them, although a hug may be helpful, but you might, if they're too reptilian, that may end up escalating. But certainly there are things with younger kids that can be useful, like heavy clothing, stress balls, squeezing that. Taste, you wouldn't particularly want to use taste as a way of soothing. The idea of eating as a way of coping, that's not great if it's a pervasive pattern, but things like a glass of water, or maybe sucking on a mint or gum, these can be very soothing things. If it's a one-off, having some food. When I used to work on a psychiatric unit, often some very unwell people would come in, and I was always amazed when the nurses would bring in a glass of water and a plate of sandwiches, how much it would calm everything down. So it can be useful, but if food is a way of soothing, can be very problematic if it's not managed. From a smell perspective, the smells are very evocative. Smells can be very soothing, whether it's candles or perfume or other smells. Certain plants can be like that. So generally, what you do is if being reptilian is significantly problematic, then you can develop a self-soothing plan. And in this plan, you have three things that when fear or when anger takes over, we try that, we try that. And what those things are, you can experiment, be playful. It can be anything. You can try anything for a week. What you do is you have a time limit for each. You don't go forever. The main aim, we want to calm the reptile so that we can move into the care for the mammal, so that we can move into a conversation about the problem. One family wanted to get a boxing bag for their son who was having anger problems, and they asked me whether I thought it was a good idea. And I said, well, it's a brilliant idea if, when he's angry, he goes and punches the punching bag, calms himself down, and then you reconnect, and then you talk about what happened, and then you repair. It might be a disaster if he goes to the punching bag, beats the crap out of the punching bag, and then it's all blown over. In that situation, we've just taught him to deal with anger by hitting things. Probably not the message you want to give. So a punching bag could be good if it leads to calming and repair, but it might be a problem if it's an end in itself. We've just taught him to hit as a way of dealing with problems. So, how to calm a reptile? The next video will be how to care for a mammal.